like to call this Planning and Economic Development Committee meeting to order. It's Tuesday, June the 6th, 2023 at 5 p.m. We'll have a moment of silence. Mr. Root?
Yes, sir. Pray with me if you'd like to. Dearest Father, thank you for this opportunity to gather together to plan, to hopefully foster the economic development and prosperity of this county. I know you desire us to prosper, desire the citizens to prosper, so I pray that this committee would be an arm, a conduit by which that would happen. Give wisdom, give guidance, grace to us all, and help us to do good work. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Durham, would you lead us in our pledge?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is approval of prior minutes. Do I hear a motion we approve the minutes for March 21st, 2023?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Vote's 3-0.
All right, the next agenda item is discussion items. Planning and code enforcement update. Mr. James Coley.
Afternoon, gentlemen. I got a very brief update for you, basically where we are year to date. I'll give you some good news about the department right now. We had our summer intern start last Wednesday. He'll be working Wednesdays and Fridays, 15 hours a week, so office help. We have a new code enforcement officer starting on Monday, and we are still looking for additional code enforcement officer and full-time planner. So if you know anybody, let us know. We'll go through where we are with applications so far this year. In front of you right now, this is the plats that have come in. You've got historical information as well. And at the end of these, we'll go through where we are year to date versus last year at the same time. Right now, as of yesterday, we had 267 plat reviews come in. We've had 14 subdivisions currently underway. Only 2 of those are minor this year, as opposed to some in the past where we've had a few more of the smaller subdivisions. These are all pretty substantial. Special exemptions and variances, we have 11 as of today. Buffer permits are way up, 24 so far this year. As people start doing more work and improvements around the lake, we are getting more of these permits. People are starting to understand the need to get them to do that work in the buffer. Essentially, June 5th to June 5th, we are ahead basically in every place. So it is not slowing down for us yet. It continues to grow. We continue to see the phones ringing all day, people stopping in. We have a lot of traffic through our office. For code enforcement, that has slowed down just a little bit. We've only opened 31 cases so far this year, closed 2 so far, placarded 20 structures this year, and then we have 128 antique cases that are still open. And happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Did I understand you to say we've got 14 developments in progress right now?
Yes, sir.
Are they all started, or is it just 14 in the pipeline?
14 that are actively working, that have submitted this year, that are working on preliminary approvals.
Do you have sufficient folks to handle what you've got on, what you're showing us now?
We are getting to everybody as soon as we can. Obviously, the subdivisions are much bigger application packets. These larger subdivisions are 50, 60, 70, 80 pages. So they get kind of spread out a little bit more. The individual plat reviews that come in every day, those get reviewed almost every single day. So they have very short waits. The bigger subdivisions have the longest wait.
questions?
Mr. Chairman. The numbers here, is that fiscal year or calendar year?
Calendar year, that's January to January.
So like, of the 29 last year that
Mhm.
came through for planning, how many do you know that came to fruition or proceeded on?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you the exact number. I would guess about a third.
Okay. And one thing, and I don't know if I've talked with Don about it, Mr. Hart, is something we ought to look at is these guys come in with complicated plans that we work on, that takes time and resources, and then when they walk away, well, we eat the cost, or the taxpayers eat the cost, it gets spread out. So something we can look at is some sort of, versus waiting until it's completed, a fee, maybe investigate to recapture a termination fee if hours is used. And then one thing Mr. Coley told me was you can have a development and it change hands, right? And then it
It
resets.
does. So, 3 of those 14 that we have for this year are ones that have changed hands.
So I think that's something we should keep in mind because that's cost that the taxpayers are having to foot the bill, or people, I guess, put their fillers out. I mean, I'm not sure, but
It's a fixed cost, so, it's time that we could be spending, reviewing something for somebody else.
and where you've been in the past, how did they handle that?
I can tell you, other places I've been charge their review fees up front before they start. But that's not necessarily saying that we should do the same thing.
That's something we can put on agenda later, maybe talk about, see how other people do it, maybe a penalty or cancellation, something.
Do you see it as an advantage from to pay their fees up front?
It's certainly advantageous to the county if you're, depends on how developer friendly you want to be and kind of where you want those fees to come in. If they're going all the way through, then it's not really an issue if they pay at the beginning or pay at the end.
Would you say we're an outlier by not charging any?
I don't know enough about other counties. So in South Carolina, I've only worked in one other county. It wouldn't be really fair. It's 50-50.
Another thing, and this may be too short notice to answer. Are there any that you know of redundant ordinances or standards that we have in place that maybe doesn't need to be there? Maybe either the state covers it, or maybe it's something that's outdated that we can work through to change the ordinance to make the process easier to get through?
We could certainly come up with a list if that'd be something you'd want to see.
You could work through that and present it to us, and we could start seeing what we can do to make things smoother.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, may I please add to that? Mr. Durham, I appreciate you bringing that up. Mr. Coley and I were just discussing this like an hour or so ago. We feel that it may be advantageous to bring in the road standards into that discussion if that's appropriate. Some of our road standards, chapter 26, not just chapter 32. So typically planning would be just chapter 32, but bringing 26 into it may help us create some better consistencies.
Okay.
That'd be good. That's something we can look at and start addressing.
Anything else?
I don't have anything else. Ma'am.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item, economic development update, Mr. Jamie Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Mize, members of the council, good to be here this evening. You have a printout in front of you, and you also have this presentation on the screen. So I'll just kind of give a quick update on where we have been from the last time that I was here. And we'll start off with business development activity. And so this is actually, I'll start off with saying for 2023, the calendar year, these are the numbers since January for what we have seen come into Oconee Economic Alliance. We had 45 inquiries, and just to refresh your memory, an inquiry is anytime we get a phone call, an email from a company, a consultant, a broker that has a business interested in Oconee County. And, we may be able to respond to it, we may not be able to, but it's an inquiry at that point. If we have something tangible to give them, a site, property, information on workforce, it then becomes a lead. So 24 of those 45 inquiries, or 53% of those, actually converted to leads. And 10 or 42% of those leads became a project. And again, a project is when a company actually visits Oconee County, or we actually get on the phone and have maybe a Teams meeting with them, a conference call, or we go and see them. Then it's an actual project, it's real. We've actually been able to touch base with the company at that point. So those leads and projects for this entire calendar year represents a potential for about $4.8 billion in new capital investment and over 9,000 new jobs. And with what we were working on this year, 3 or 30% of those projects became wins, and we'll talk about those in just a few minutes. In total, though, when you talk about carryover from last year for leads and projects and what is still active, there are about 56 that we consider to still be active leads and projects. And those represent the potential for $12 billion in investment and over 22,000 new jobs. And as I've said before, we're not getting anywhere near those jobs or those investments only because a lot of these companies are looking at the same locations, such as Golden Corner or OITP, and you can't fit all of them in there. So we're limited in what we can accommodate. If you go to the next slide here, this is what we've had since the last time I presented to you at the Planning and Economic Development Committee meeting. We've had 22 inquiries since March 17th. Of those inquiries, 17 of them are leads, so we were able to respond to them, and 5 or 29% of those leads became projects. Those leads and projects represent $4.5 billion in new capital investment and over 8,142 new jobs. So it's been a very busy year for us to date. Here are the 3 wins that we've had this year, and since the last time we talked. BorgWarner, as you all know, that was a $42.7 million expansion with 122 new jobs at their Seneca facility. The operation will supply holding systems for the EV batteries and vehicles that they're working with. Mine America, which was our most recent announcement, Netherlands company that makes poultry processing equipment, going to construct a state-of-the-art distribution center at OITP, $10.8 million, 25 new jobs. And that facility is expected to open next March. And then you have tonight, which we're excited about as far as inducement resolution and first reading, Project Ironman, West Coast Advanced Manufacturer looking to expand its Oconee County facility, create a center of excellence here. Capital investment, $28.8 million and 100 new jobs. Next slide. So I wanted to kind of share with you all on a fiscal year basis. I went back as far as I could go with announced projects. So the key economic development projects are going to be announced ones that we do with the South Carolina Department of Commerce. So all this is verifiable through the South Carolina Department of Commerce's website. You go to it and this is the announcements we've had. So since fiscal year 2013 through fiscal year 2023, those are the numbers. Those are the number of projects announced for that year, the investment number for the year, and the jobs. This has been the best year for jobs and investment announcements that we've had since 2013. And it's higher than 2013, so it's the best year we've had in 11 years. The average during that time frame annually was about $36.7 million in investment with 137 new jobs. That's the average for that 10-year period, not counting this 11th year. And so here you can see for new investment, our new investment for this fiscal year is $75 million, or 205% higher than the prior 10-year average. And it was $16.9 million, or 18% higher than our second best year during those 11 years. New investment for this year represents 23% of the overall investment the last 11 years. If you think about that, if things were evenly spread out, and obviously COVID was a year, it's kind of a throwout year, but let's just say it was evenly dispersed, you would be looking at about 9% each year, those investments making up. So this well exceeds what you would do on an average year. The last thing is on the new jobs in fiscal year '23, we were 325 or 237% higher than the average for the last 10 years, and we're 163 or 55% higher than our second best year. And the new jobs for this year represent 31% of the overall new jobs since fiscal year 2013. So let's talk about a little bit of the marketing, which helps us in the recruitment of these companies. Engagement and events, we've done a lot with site consultants. There's been a couple events locally, one in Greenville and one that Tyler James, my project manager, went to in Denver, which was interfacing with the consultants. We also had the Upstate Alliance project managers down here to do a familiarization tour of the county, to get to see the sites and to get to see some of our businesses. And then we've been on 94.1 once a month doing radio interviews with Kevin on Coffee Time to talk about what's going on with economic development in the county. We're also in the process of updating our website, a whole lot of new information being added to that, including demographics, new properties, our new board members or executive committee members, and things of that nature. We also are finishing up our workforce development video, which is going to be a great way to promote why Oconee County is a great place for business, and it starts with our workforce. And so we've had the presidents of Tri-County Tech, we've had the superintendent of Oconee County Schools, Hamilton Career and Technology Center, along with a couple of our businesses like BASF, Borg Warner, JTech, and myself speaking on behalf of workforce in the county. And then the last thing is Sites Lecture Magazine, and you have a copy of the ad that we're going in there. They're going to run a special issue on upstate South Carolina. And this goes out to a number of decision makers from site location consultants to corporate executives. And so this is, if you look in your packet here, this is the ad. It's like this. This was created in-house. We don't need to go out and pay for an advertising firm to do it. These are ideas that we come up with and the way this looks, and I think it's a really good-looking ad. So that will be in the June or the July 2023 issue. And then the last thing I want to talk about is product development. We have a new industrial site that we've been able to roll out. It's the Thrift Brothers site located on US 123, right across from Blue Ridge Electric near SC11. It's a 34-acre site, has 20 acres that have been cleared and graded. All utilities are there, water, sewer, electric, natural gas, nothing needs to be done. We're trying to see if we can get an option from the Thrift family. And in my mind, that option doesn't mean us paying them any money for the option. It means getting money to do the due diligence work, and a lot of that can come from some of our partners. But we need to do the due diligence work to make sure the soil is compatible, compact, it can support an industrial building. We know it can, but we just need to confirm that. So that's where we are with that. Asking price on that is $57,352 an acre. $1,950,000 is the price on that. I think that's a pretty fair price for a site that has 20 acres that you can almost build on immediately with a little bit of site prep work. So that's where we are. We're excited about some of the projects that we're carrying over from last year. There's some big ones out there, and it's been a pretty good fiscal year. I just wrapped up, it's almost my one-year anniversary. It was May 31st. So it's been one full year for me here, and absolutely love being in this county and working for council, county administrator, and our partners. Any questions you have, I'll be happy to take.
Amy, I'm just curious, where does Oconee County stand versus the other counties? Do you have any data as far as growth between Oconee County and other counties in the state?
What kind of growth are you specifically done?
The numbers that you've shown us
Yeah.
in projects or inquiries?
I wouldn't have their inquiries and their projects. I would probably be able to go back and pull numbers of what communities have got in terms of their investment in jobs over that time frame. That's a pretty big task to do with 46 counties. But what I'm trying to do for us is to benchmark where we have been, because we're different, we're smaller, we're kind of isolated up in the little northwest corner. We're not, although we have sites on the interstate, like Golden Corner, we're not directly on one. So we're trying to look at where we have been and where we're going and what we can do to take it to the next level. So, I mean, you could compare it to similar counties, but you couldn't compare us to, say, a Greenville or even an Anderson. They're different in nature. But if, we could work on trying to compile those numbers.
Okay. Well, I appreciate what you do for Oconee with the Economic Alliance Board.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So I think this is great news and big news, the growth over the years, 10 years. I think it's something that needs to be out there. We don't have any media here, but maybe Riley or Dick or worse media can pick it up. But that's huge. I mean, you're looking at 462 jobs, way above the average. Does this include Project Iron Man? Probably not.
It does include Iron Man.
It does Iron Man?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and then the leads that you talk about, does the majority of the leads, do they come from the Department of Commerce?
The majority do. Majority do. Sometimes we get direct calls, but most of everything goes through Commerce, but then it also goes to the Upstate Alliance. So a lot of times we'll get an email, most of the time, we'll get emails from Upstate Alliance saying, here's a project that is looking, and the project manager is, Tony Allen or, whoever from Commerce. So even if it's a Commerce-initiated project, it typically throws through Upstate Alliance and then back to us. But we also have a number, that said, a lot of times when we're working these projects and there's a Commerce project manager, if we have that relationship with the site consultant, in a lot of cases we do, we're not even communicating with the Commerce folks. We're now working directly with them, with the site consultant.
And do they send you any leads of Chinese-based companies? I know we have battery manufacturing, all this is big.
If you look at the battery manufacturing projects, most of those are South Korean or they are Japanese. So, the state, the state has pulled back from doing anything with China. And it's an issue that I'm glad to see because from my perspective as the Economic Development Director, and I've worked with Chinese companies in the past in Lancaster County, I'm glad to see that we're not incentivizing these projects any longer for a variety of reasons.
No, I agree with that. I wouldn't want our county to incentivize. I mean, if they come and they want to build, that's fine, but to not incentivize them. Is that something we can do to set policy so that if somebody comes in independent lead, he doesn't waste time on it?
The state has made a decision, so and they have not necessarily publicized this, but they have communicated it back to the economic developers, is that if a project is Chinese owned, meaning Chinese government owned, they are not going to incentivize that project. So every project that comes in, if there is a Chinese element to it, they're vetting it to make sure of that. I'm not sure when you have a company that is based in China, that is headquartered in China, that's where they're originating from, that you can peel that layer back enough to determine if it's government-owned or it's not. And in that case, I think there should be some vetting on our side as well. And so if we see that a project is based out of China and we can't determine in our mind, I can tell you, if they're based in China, there's Chinese government money involved in that. It's inevitable. The gray area is when you get projects that are maybe not necessarily based in China, but I think those are different animals too. But I think if Chinese government based in China, it's probably Chinese government controlled. So.
I'm glad the states took that stance. But I'm like you, it's hard. You have a corporation come in, and like you said, it's hard to peel back enough layers to get to the core of where that
I mean, the problem for us is that I hear all the time, I hear from even the South Korean companies, if they don't like the policy of bringing in the Chinese businesses because the ones that are funded by the Chinese government, besides the adversarial relationships that exist already, the fact is, if they're being funded and propped up by the Chinese government, they can undercut every business from U.S. companies to European companies, it doesn't matter. They're being subsidized. And these other companies are not being subsidized by the U.S. government. They're not being subsidized by their home countries. But if the Chinese government's subsidizing them, that creates a negative impact for our businesses here.
Correct.
So I agree with what you said on what the state's doing and then your take on it as well. And I'm happy to see that. One more thing. One thing that's always bothered me is we'll have projects come forward for, 3 readings.
Yes.
And there's nothing public put out about it. They'll go 3 readings and a public hearing. And I understand that sometimes the corporations, they want to keep things tight. I understand, from a competitive standpoint. But is there something we can do without compromising the integrity of the project to upfront, when we have our first reading, to put something out so the public has something, so they can understand somewhat what's going on?
Sure. In Lancaster County, I spent 6 years, we would provide that summary to county administrator, county council, county attorney prior to a meeting. And it says, this is what is being requested, this is the background of the project. Keeping it in our confidential code name, not revealing who the company is, but to give a little general description of what this project involves and why we think it should be incentivized and those tax credits, abatements should be provided to them. So, I would say you either go ahead and do that where economic development does the write-up and submits it like an agenda summary, or if we don't do that, we come here and you can question me and I can come up in front of the council prior to at the meeting when it's coming up for a vote, and I can give you the background. I would say it's one or the other. We don't necessarily need to do both of those, but one or the other, either do it as an agenda summary. The good thing about an agenda summary as opposed, but if you had questions, obviously I could come up and answer them. But I think if you do an agenda summary, now it's in the public record, and so people that aren't at the meeting can actually get that and see it. So it may be best to do it that way because it would go with the documents that are online.
I like that idea.
I think that's something we could do going forward.
But I know you mentioned earlier, like executive session items. I think executive session items stay in executive session because we could go into executive session for a project, right? And come out and say, man, we're not doing anything with this. And so once it moves to the stage of an inducement resolution or first reading, I think that's something that makes sense for us to be able to do that. We can support it.
What do we need to do to make that process go into effect?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, we'll just start initiating it at the next council meeting. We have the template. You all receive agenda item summaries for action items now. We'll just have the Economic Alliance Office submit agenda item summaries with the work that Mr. Root and Mr. Gilbert are working on together for ordinance or resolution.
Okay.
No formal action needed.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? All right. I hear a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion, adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.